Welcome, everybody. We are so glad to see you. Welcome, welcome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Today, we have a full schedule today. I could not be more excited to have our very own Executive Director, Dr. Joy Dahl, as our guest today. And so I just want to say hi to everybody. Welcome you to the Polished Lunch and Learn. My name is Amy Cedrone, and I am the National Director here at the Polished Network. We're so excited to have all of our members joining us on Zoom and our viewers watching over Facebook Live. And I am really, really excited about this topic, cultivating community at work. We talk a lot about that in church world about cultivating community, but I'm excited to talk about what that means as far as our work is concerned. I want you to know we have a lot going on at Polished right now, and we want to make sure you know all the things about it. So go to polishednetwork.org to check out all the things, and I'll highlight just a few of them. After Joy's interview in just a minute, we're going to go to our Ask Me Anything segment, where she will answer questions that our members or that you on Zoom have submitted. And so if you are joining us by Zoom, you will be able to join us in the chat. This is typically a members only segment, but we're inviting everyone on Zoom to stay today to get a glimpse of some of the benefits that our network members receive. This segment is open to anyone who registers in advance for the Lunch and Learn. So to get access, you Facebook Live people, to get access to the November Ask Me Anything, go to polishednetwork.org/lunch and learn to register today. Speaking of exclusive content, members of the Polished Network get access to a variety of benefits, including discounts on tickets to our in-person chapter events, digital downloads, those kinds of things. So to learn more, go to polishednetwork.org. We would love to have you join. By the way, did you know that Polished has a weekly podcast? Of course you do, because it's fabulous. In that podcast, our co-director, Kat Armstrong, interviews women who share their stories about how God has impacted their faith and their work. And you can check it out wherever you get your podcasts, but there is a link on our website as well, polishednetwork.org/podcast. So make sure to check that out. You know, Polished is a network that we say gathers working women to navigate the workplace and explore faith together in authentic community, what we're talking about today. One way that we experience that authentic community is through our local chapters. So to be a part of a local chapter or to start a local chapter, you can find out our locations by visiting our website. And I don't think I have told you enough, that's polishednetwork.org. We won't be having an October Lunch and Learn because of the Boldly Conference. Surely you've heard about it by now. But our November theme will be Thank You for Your Service. Here at the Polished Network, we want to honor all of those women who have worked in civil service, the armed forces, or have been an essential worker during COVID, serving and sacrificing for our nation and our communities. So our Lunch and Learn guest for November will be our very own Brandy Baxter. She's the Strategic Partnership Director at Polished Network, but she's also a financial coach and an Air Force veteran. She has done it all. So more on her later, but you can register for the next Lunch and Learn. Again, polishednetwork.org/lunch and learn. Speaking of October, you guys, October the 8th. That's the Boldly Conference. You have to come. It's going to be so good. You don't even know. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait for you to see the lineup. But this live virtual event, it's live and virtual, is going to be October the 8th. And we would love for you to register. And let me tell you, it's the tickets are $129. You can register at the boldlyconference.org. You know what? We have that wrong on this slide. It's boldlyconference.com. We need to change that. I just caught that. So make sure that you go and you register at boldlyconference.com. It's the first of its kind faith and work conference by women for women. First of its kind. You have to come. So boldlyconference.com. Our theme for September, what we're about to talk about, is cultivating community at work. You know, all of us can benefit from cultivating community in the workplace because thriving personal relationships determine much of our happiness quota. and because we spend most of our time working. So yes, cultivating community has its challenges, but we're confident that authentic community with our peers and coworkers is key to enjoying the spaces where we spend most of our energy at work. As working women, we have the unique opportunity to bring our full selves to work and develop lifelong friendships and allies. And Joy is going to talk a little bit about those allies in a minute. To do this well, though, we have to look to Jesus as our model of healthy boundaries, compassion-filled approachability, and integrity and excellence in our work. He worked alongside men and women from all types of backgrounds who became his closest friends. And so we're going to seek new ways to develop community as we walk this journey together. And that's why this is our theme for September. If all of this sounds great to you, and if you want to reach out to us, we would love to hear from you. And so you can find our contact information on our website or find us on our Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn pages. And we're going to throw those links up in the chat to you, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Okay, enough from me. I want to introduce you to Dr. Joy Dahl. It is a privilege to have her here with us today. I get to work alongside of her day by day by day, so it's my just extreme joy to share her with you all. I can't wait for you to hear her heart. A lot of you might know her from the work that she's doing here at Polish, but you're going to get a glimpse of really the deepest passion of her heart. Joy is a disciple-making disciple, helping believers embrace their calling as Christ ambassadors in the world and in the workplace. She's a CPA and a financial officer by trade. Joy has focused most of her career on startup and high-growth companies in Washington, D.C., New York, and Texas. I love that we stole this Yankee down here to Texas. Joy earned 3 degrees from Dallas Theological Seminary. She has a master's of Christian education. She has a master's of biblical studies and a doctorate of ministry. Her emphasis was on the integration of faith and work, and that led her to her current role here with us as executive director of the Polish Network. Joy blogs monthly, and we're going to talk about this, but she jogs. She used to jog all the time. Joy blogs monthly on Bible.org and serves on the board of Entrust, which multiplies leaders to multiply churches. And she's the visionary behind the Boldly Conference, which is a first of its kind faith and work for women conference. Joy and her sweet husband, Gordon, call Dallas home. And Joy's favorite things include God's word, international travel, dark chocolate, of course, horses, flowers, beach getaways. Who doesn't love that? Running, her big dogs, and adventure. So it's my joy to introduce you to Dr. Joy Dahl.
Thanks, Amy. What a pleasure it is to be here. And by the way, happy World Chocolate Day. I just found out today is World Chocolate Day. So it's a good day.
That's awesome. You know, what we've been doing here on the Lunch and Learn, Joy, is we've been doing more of a presentation style. But you and I had a conversation last week in North Dallas, and we just felt like we want to do this more of an interview style back and forth because we want to invite you on Zoom to enter into this conversation with us. And so I want to ask you, Joy, a few questions. But before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about your background? What brought you to Dallas career-wise? How did you get to Polished?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So yeah, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. Grew up in a family that went to church every Sunday, prayed to God. My story actually starts at age 13. My father died, and my final promise to him was, Daddy, one day I'm going to make you proud. And to me at that age, that meant becoming a success. So for the next 20 years, I did all I could to become rich and successful in the world. By age 33, I became CFO of a regional broadcasting company in New York. So by the world standards, I had it all: prestigious career, big house, party lifestyle. But behind the mask, I was broken. I was divorced. I was coming out of an abusive relationship, and I was really struggling. I still believed in God. I prayed every day. I had no concept of a relationship with Jesus. And I just kept feeling like there has to be more to life than this. And then a coworker actually gave me the book, Purpose Driven Life, that prompted me to go back to church. I met Jesus. That's a whole nother part of my story. But it was at that point that I was really navigating, what does it mean now to be a Christ follower in the workplace as a CFO leading an organization. What does that look like? So I transitioned kind of into this new phase of my life, soaking up all I could of God and his word, ultimately moved back from New York to DC, started my own CFO consulting practice, which I had for 10 years, moved here to Dallas. And it was when I moved here to Dallas, I was actually teaching Bible study in my church. And I felt like the Lord said very clearly, if you're going to be a teacher of my word, you've got to be better equipped to handle it with care. And that prompted me over a couple of years to then transition out of my career and go into seminary. And, when I met Jesus, I was 35 at the time. And I had said, Lord, I give it all to you. I'll do anything you want me to do. I'll give up my career. I'll do whatever you ask me to do. But he didn't ask me to do that until about 10 years later. And, or maybe it was 12 years later. When he did, it was really difficult. I didn't realize how much of my identity, who I was as a person, the career I had built, the organization I had built, it was really difficult to transition out of that. So that's how I came to Dallas. That's how I got to seminary. And it's been quite a journey.
Wow. Even just hearing your story again, I've heard it a few times. So many questions are just spurred in my mind. And that reminds me that if you have questions for Joy, we have a time after this segment for you to ask those. So please put those in the chat if you want to ask her a question just about her, what she shares about her past. It's a really thrilling testimony that you have. And I think there's a lot of ladies, Joy, that can really identify with that. So you shared a little bit about your CFO journey, what brought you to Dallas, but how did you end up at Polished?
Well, and when I was in my master's program, about halfway through, I felt like the Lord said, buckle up, we're about to go a whole new direction. And that new direction was this concept of theology of work. I had never heard it before, certainly not in the workplace. I had never heard it in church, but because of my background in the workplace, it just resonated with me. Who we are as Christ ambassadors, what God has prepared for us to do, how we find our purpose. Again, what I had thought before is there has to be more to life than this. Well, even as a follower of Christ, I'm still trying to figure out, Lord, what is that purpose? And as I'm learning about theology of work, I'm learning what that means to step into our calling, to find purpose in life. And so that's what prompted me to continue on into my doctoral work, focusing on integration of faith and work and theology of work. But when I started taking this sharp right turn with Jesus, I started meeting with people who are in the space of integrating faith and work. And one of the people that I met with, you actually introduced me to, was Kat Armstrong, co-founder of Polished. Because in my mind, with my whole career being in startup and high growth companies, I thought, Lord, are you asking me to start something? That makes sense. But he wasn't asking me to start something. But that's when I first met Kat. She and I became friends. I learned about Polished. I spoke at one of their events. I became a supporter, really loved this ministry. And so as I was coming through my doctoral work, and Kat had asked me, it was the end of 2019, to lunch. I thought we were just going to catch up for lunch. We hadn't seen each other for a while. She actually had an ulterior motive, and that was to ask if I would step into the executive director role. She was ready to pass the baton, and she and the board were looking for someone to come into this regional organization to take it national. And so as I prayed about it, I just thought, I see myself in the women of Polished, of before Christ and after Christ, being in the workplace, needing to know our purpose, our calling, that Christ has commissioned us as his ambassadors. I see myself in women saying, what is my purpose? How do I find that? And needing the community of like-minded women, of women who understand the challenges of working every day and also are pursuing Jesus. How do we build a community like that? And so it just resonated with me. And here I am. It's been quite a ride. My first day was the first day of the stay-at-home order in Dallas because of COVID. So everything changed on day one, but it's been a year and a half now and just an incredible ride.
Wow, I love that story. I was joking. I asked you the question and then I said, well, I introduced you to polished, but really the Lord did that. And he really did. I love that. I just introduced you to Kat, just because you shared something, that a love for something that was in common. And so often the Lord uses that, right? Just that little introduction. And this is part of cultivating community, is we link people together that have similar passions and values. And look what happened. Like, God brought you here, which is amazing. Joy, you made the jump from somewhat might call the secular world, um, in your CFO, you know, uh, executive leadership past, to what some might call the sacred world, because at Polish Network, there's a huge part that's ministry related to what we do. And you see that a little differently, not so much secular world to sacred world. You mentioned that there's something about this supposed sacred secular divide that just doesn't resonate with you. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, I do not believe in a sacred secular divide. I think that it is I think it's very prevalent and very in various churches in our world, that the church is on one side and that's a sacred space. The world is on the other side. That is not sacred space, or it's secular space. So if you want to do something important for God, then you have to quit your job to come work in this sacred space. Or if you want to find Jesus or come into community, you've got to come into sacred space. But that's just a fallacy. There are no hierarchies and types of work. There are no hierarchies and types of workers. There is one creation, and Jesus is Lord of it all. There is not a church world and a non-church world. There is one world, and we are called to be disciples in the whole of life, in every realm, in every aspect that we enter into. And so I think it is really important for us to understand that we are called to dispel this notion of sacred and secular. Can we come into places and have experiences where we feel his presence and we're worshiping in community? Absolutely. But we are called to go into the world. Jesus himself in the book of John refers to himself, Jesus, as a sent one over 25 times. God has always been a sending God, and he is asking us to come, to follow him, to go into the world as his ambassadors. I heard a sermon a couple months ago about the difference between church people and kingdom people. Church people are focused on getting people into the church, but kingdom people are focused on bringing the kingdom of God out into the world.
It's good,
We're
Joy.
called to be kingdom people, not church people. There is no sacred or secular. We bring the presence of the Holy Spirit. We are Christ's ambassadors. So where we go, it is holy ground.
Joy, that, man, I have a little goosies on my arm, because it has the ring of truth to it, right? We're not a holy huddle as the church. We're not just supposed to bring people in to our little spaces. Kingdom people get out there. We get out there into the world where everybody else is. It's so good that I hope you all caught that distinction. It's so good, Joy. You focused on in your doctoral dissertation about theology of work. And a lot of us understand a little bit about theology being the study of God, or the study of things that are religious. We have a theology of salvation. We have all this. But what do you mean by a theology of work? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's good. So that work theology, for people that are wondering, it actually does mean the study of God. It's from two Greek words. So theology is study of God. Theology of work then is study of God's work. So that would be both the work that God does and the work that God ordains, or the work that he is calling us into, inviting us into, work that has been prepared specifically for each one of us. So in theology, there's theology of God, theology of church, theology of work. But no matter what theology we're talking about, I truly believe that theology is not something that we learn, it's something that we live. So our theology of work becomes the foundation of how we interact with others, how we view our work, how we view ourselves. It's how we act, how we react, how we interact with others. So theology is really important. And we see theology of work, beginning in the very first verse of the Bible, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created. Or in other words, in the beginning, God went to work. And we see the good of creation. Then the very good, his masterpiece of humanity, man and woman. In Genesis 1, we see that they're created in the image of God. So we, as humanity, we are created in the image of a God who works. And that is part of our purpose, to enter into good work. We won't go deep into the theology today, but the Bible is actually a progression, a cultural progression from the garden in Genesis 1 all the way through to the city of Revelation. And we see God's work. So in Genesis 1, the good, very good. Genesis 2, it goes a little bit deeper. He brings man and woman together, and he commissions them together to continue his good work in the world. Then if we quick fast forward, Ephesians 2:10, Christ has come, he's resurrected. We now as believers are called as his ambassadors. And it says that we are his masterpiece. We're God's masterpiece. Think back again, the very good in Genesis 1, his masterpiece created in Christ Jesus. We're now believers to do good works. Again, we're resonating back to Genesis 1, to do good works, which God has prepared specifically for each one of us to do. So that's just a beginning of theology of work, but it shows us that work is intrinsically good. It is God's plan. We are invited into that plan for us as individuals, for us as his ambassadors for the world. All women work, regardless of context, regardless of if it's paid or unpaid. We're created in the image of God who works. We work in some capacity, and work is intrinsically good. It is before the fall. So we absolutely feel the impact of sin and a fallen world, and it can be difficult and toilsome and hard. But when we press into the Lord, it can also be beautiful, and we can find our flourishing in what we do every single day. So that's kind of an intro to theology of work.
I love that. This idea of flourishing in our workspace, that's really part of the mission of Polished, is to help women flourish in their workspace. I love that you mentioned that. And I love that you talk about Genesis. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to Genesis. I love that book. And so many people think about work in relationship to Genesis 3, which is after the fall, where it says the ground was cursed that Adam had to work. And they assume that that means that work was cursed. But I love that you focus on that Genesis 1 and 2, before the fall of mankind, before sin entered the world, that work was something that was ordained and sanctioned by God. It's something that was good and that would bring joy to Adam and Eve and joy to God. So I love that perspective, and that helps us see things a little bit differently, maybe, about our work environment. So thank you for bringing that up. And, we're talking about the theology of work. Our theme for this month is cultivating community at work. And what would you say, Joy, is maybe let me phrase it like this. What does the theology of work and cultivating community at work have in common? Are there any synergies between these two things, or are they completely different concepts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, when we think of work, there's really two aspects to work. There's the work itself, which we are called to do good work, do work to the glory of God, work with integrity, work with excellence, and knowing that excellent work is excellent, no matter what type of work that it is, and it does bring glory to God. Mm-hmm. But the other aspect of work are our relationships at work. We're not going into work trying to evangelize, proselytize. That's not the purpose of work. The purpose of work is to work, is to expand God's kingdom on earth, to take back ground, to be his representatives. But cultivating relationships at work are crucial for a couple, I think, two different reasons. One, because that is how we are Christ's ambassador. We're building friendships, we're building allies. We are showing that we are trustworthy in how we work with excellence, how we care for others. We are inviting others to join into relationships so that we truly are bringing this perspective of wanting the organization to flourish, wanting our coworkers to flourish. So those relationships are important. And as we grow in relationship with people and we get to know them and they get to know us, that allows us to have opportunity to come alongside them, to care for them, but also to share our faith and our experience and to begin walking that journey together. I think it's also important for us as women to find like-minded women, whether they're at work or outside of work, but like-minded working women who understand the challenges of work, who are also pursuing Jesus, who can come alongside. We can encourage one another. We can pray. We can seek wisdom and discern. We're just walking together in community. And so I think that theology of work and community aspect, they absolutely are hand in hand, and we cannot flourish without community. We are created in the image of a God, a triune God, community. We are created for community within the body of Christ. And in our workplaces, we need to be coming alongside others as well, because that again is as a representation, but also for us to have those allies and those people that we've got their back, they have our back. We know that there's someone in our corner, and it's out of genuine love and friendship.
Joy, that's so good. You know, I love that you make the distinction that you cannot really have a theology of work or a theology at all without the concept of community, because that is how a triune God, the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit, they exist in community. And he created Adam and Eve to live in community. He created men and women to live in community with one another. And so those things they really, truly are linked. And you use a really, really interesting word there you use the word allies, that the concept of community could really be looked at as allyship. And we hear that a lot right now, especially in regard to racial reconciliation, the need for allies. And I love too that you make a distinction here about allyship between women. And I love that. I want you to talk a little bit about that. And maybe you could, we're talking kind of some heady stuff here, but are there any practical, tangible do's and don'ts to cultivating this allyship, to cultivating community?
Yeah. And I would love to, I wrote a blog on this a few months ago. I think you guys are going to put that in the chat. I would love to share that with everyone who's watching. So I do think that there are some important do's and don'ts for cultivating friendships, cultivating allies, cultivating community, particularly in the workplace. I'm actually going to start with the don'ts. Let's start there, and then we'll go to the do's. So the first don't is don't compare. Comparison can just kill our happiness, our joy. It can kill relationships. There's always going to be someone who is smarter, who is stronger, who is faster, someone who we think is more beautiful, someone who has what we don't have. They may be friends on Facebook. They might be friends, very close friends of ours. They might be people we don't really know, but we have to work with and see every day. And if we start comparing to others, that just feeds bitterness and envy and jealousy, and that will kill any ability to truly create an authentic friendship, regardless of who the other person is. So don't compare. God has created each one of us uniquely with our gifts, and so we need to focus on what we bring and not what someone else has. The second don't is don't compete. And this is really difficult for women. I know for myself, growing up in the financial world early in my career, as a woman, it wasn't that I had to be as good as someone else to be able to move up the ladder. I had to be markedly better. And so I know that there is absolutely a sense of competition in many workplaces, but I think that there can be healthy competition and there can be unhealthy competition. And a big part of that is how we perceive it. When we're looking to go into any sort of situation, we don't want to be at a place where we're looking to push people aside, or how can we get over, how can we do better, how can we do our best. Let's absolutely try to do our best, but again, not in competing with someone else. Let's really seek at, we have one CEO, that's Jesus. I mean, we have other people that we report to, but if he is the primary person that we're reporting to every day, how can we bring our best to him? And again, be praying for the people that we're working with and saying, Lord, help me to see others as you see them. Help me to bring my best and to look at the flourishing of the organization, of other people, but not in competition. So how can we have healthy competition that spurs on good results, but not unhealthy competition that pushes people aside or tries to diminish them? The third don't is don't condemn. I think it's really easy to, in the workplace, come with our own narrative of why people are the way that they are, what they're doing. And I get it. There are people who drag us down. There are people who weigh us down. There are people who wear us down. I understand that completely. But again, I think we need to come with a different perspective. We don't know the shoes that someone else walks in. We don't know what they've gone through in the past, what their triggers are, what they're going through right now. Most people in the workplace are going to put a mask on. I know that for many years, I did that every single day. And so let's try to come with a heart of forgiveness. Let's try to come with a heart of trying to seek to, again, get to know people, to understand their stories, and to be willing to share our own. So don't condemn, because that leads to judgment. And we know that Jesus says, as we judge others, so will we be judged. Let's come with forgiveness and really try to have an open mind and a collaborative heart. So those are the three don'ts. Don't compare, don't compete, don't condemn. The three do's then, the first one is do care. You know, I feel like we have a ministry as Christ ambassadors, a ministry of prayer and care. That we're praying for our workplace, we're praying for our coworkers, our bosses, our customers, our vendors, whether they know it or not. And we can have this sense of true care, doing acts of kindness, having kind words. So bring a sense of care where we're coming alongside people, trying to mentor others, really trying to help build people up, and not just focused on our own advancement. The second would be, so do care. The second do is, oh, I just lost it. Compassion, I'm sorry. Do extend compassion. Again, we don't know the shoes that others have walked in, but sometimes, you know, compassion, it's not pity, it's not feeling sorry, it's taking action. And so I feel like sometimes we need to be willing to take our shoes off and kind of walk in some of those mud puddles of real life with other people. Come alongside. Again, it doesn't mean that we need to jump all into a mud puddle and get covered in mud, but it does mean that we need to get messy sometimes, that we're walking the journey of life together, that we're coming alongside, that we, again, have shown ourselves to be trustworthy, that we let somebody know and maybe say, hey, I'm praying for you. And that if they want to go deeper in conversation, we would love to come alongside them. But if nothing else, we at least care for them and we let them know that we care. And that's a sense of the action then towards compassion. And the third do is do commit. Commit to connecting with others, commit to expanding your circle. I think it's really important for us to make the decision that I am going to enter in, that I am going to truly have a heart for growing authentic friendship, allyship, relationship, whatever that might look like. And that it's not with an agenda. We're not trying to get to know someone because they're the popular person, or we're not trying to get to know someone because we want to tell them, you know, we're not coming with an agenda. We're coming truly because we're called to love and care for others, to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to be whole life disciples. And this is a sense of whole life discipleship. And I had a blog that just came out today, actually, on Bible.org. It's called Lies and Dark Chocolate. Again, who knew? World Chocolate Day. God has a plan for this stuff. But it talks about be the friend that we want to have. And you can go and find that blog today. But yeah, be the friend. Don't always look for that friend to come to you, but be that friend first. I think it's really important.
Joy, so good. So, the question was, what are the do's and don'ts for cultivating community, for creating these allies, this idea of allies and allies within the workplace? And I think Aaron put these things in the chat if you didn't get a chance to write them down. It's don't compare, compete, or condemn. So good. And then do care, do have compassion, and do commit to cultivating community. That last one's so important because we can think about this all day long. We can miss it for ourselves and desire it for ourselves. But that last one it's really compelling because, it says, get out there and do it and make a commitment, to do it. And that can be in the form of, sending a note or asking somebody out for coffee or for happy hour afterwards, or, just make that effort to connect with somebody. I think we're sometimes scared to do that because we're afraid of being rejected. But when you think there's so many people that are, and I know from talking to woman after woman, they're desiring this. They want to be reached out to. So I love that you are like, just do it. Commit to cultivating those relationships. It's so good. We are almost out of time, Joy, but I didn't want to stop our time without talking about something that's really near and dear to your heart. And, your passion is equipping working women with a biblical theology of work. I think that is super clear. And I love that about you. It's beautiful. But I know that you're also passionate about helping women connect in community. You are committed to connecting people, that last one that you shared. Can you share about how that led to your vision for the Boldly Conference? You might not know, those of you watching, that Joy really is the brainchild behind the Boldly Conference that's coming up on October the 8th. Joy, can you share a little bit about how Boldly came to be and why this is a great next step for women seeking authentic community?
Absolutely. When I was in my doctoral work, something the Lord just kept impressing upon my heart over and over is that there are no faith and work conferences for women. Mm-hmm. There are faith and work conferences, which are great, but there are very few women on stage, and they're generally not focused on our needs, the struggles that we have, the hopes and desires that we have, the need that we have for community. And so as we were coming into 2021 planning for Polished, and I was saying, Lord, what is it that you want from us for this year? And I just felt, he said very clearly, this is the year. This is the year that I want a faith and work conference by women for women. And that is how we came to the Boldly Conference. It is the first of its kind, faith and work conference specifically for women. And I mean, it's going to be amazing. It is a one-day live event, but virtual. So you can meet in your small groups, in offices, in homes, in churches. We have some watch parties that are happening, but the power is that it's a live event. However, we don't want this to be a live event where women come, get a shot of inspiration, and then they go. We really want this to be a next step of coming together, of finding that community of like-minded women and taking next steps together. So throughout the conference, we have 20 main stage, amazing speakers. We're going to be focused on what are next steps. We have resources from our sponsors, from all of our speakers, 20 main stage, 30 breakout speakers, resources, content, all about integrating faith and work, how we live it out. Think of it as professional development with a faith influence. And I think it's going to be a very powerful day. We have 3 sections: created boldly with purpose, talking about who are we as Christ ambassadors? What is it that he is calling us to do? How do we find that purpose? Second, leading boldly with faith perspective. As followers of Christ, we are all leaders in our circles of influence. What does that look like? How do we do that with faith perspective? And then living boldly with passion. What does it look like to live out our faith every single day in the whole of life? We'll be talking about things like excellence versus perfection. How do we make that trade-off of truly working with excellence for the glory of God and not our own self-ambition? We'll have the idea of Christian ambition. Is it a thing? And is it different for men than it is for women? And what about taking a seat at the table? Why it's important for women of faith to take a seat at the table in business, in community, in life. These are just a few of the topics. Imposter syndrome is another one. A lot of us struggle with that. So it's going to be a rich day of content, of coming together, of next steps, of really being encouraged, being inspired, but not stopping when the conference ends. Really, how can we go the next day? It's a collaborative effort with various organizations, all equipping working women. That's why it's not called the Polished Conference. It's called the Boldly Conference, because we want to reach out to the 45 million working women in the US that identify as Christian. We want to be a place where we can come together, we can be encouraged, we can be equipped, we can be empowered to then go out into our workplace mission fields as Christ ambassadors, and we can do it together with a sense of community.
I can't be more excited about this because I'm dreaming about what the impact of Boldly could be on so many women. And, the price of the ticket is kind of amazing when you think about what you're getting. We have almost 50 speakers from all kinds of backgrounds, from, the first executive vice president of Walmart is one of our speakers. And we have, Joy, can you share, so I don't want to take the mic, but could you share some of just 2 or 3 of our speakers that are coming?
Absolutely. We have Megan Alexander of Insight Edition. We have Joe Saxton, who's world-renowned Bible teacher. Kat Armstrong, obviously our co-founder. Celia Swanson, who you were talking about. Deanne Turner, formerly of Chick-fil-A. You can go on boldlyconference.com. You can see all the main stage. There's a button at the bottom of that. Then you can see the breakout speakers. It really is an amazing line. I know I keep saying that word, but I'm in awe of how God is raising up these women. And I truly believe that God is raising up his daughters, his workplace daughters, in a new way. And I think that Boldly becomes the launch pad, a catalyst to how we go forward from here.
Joy, thank you so much. I imagine that this topic, and even Boldly, talking about the Boldly Conference and the Theology of Work, sparked a lot of questions. And I'm looking forward to our Ask Me Anything segment that we're going to start in just a second. But first, I wanted to take a moment, as we're talking about all of this, to share about, we're talking about the Boldly Conference and women in leadership and how we can see God differently, how we can see our work differently. But I don't want to miss the chance to really talk about the root of all that. And that's how we have hope in the first place, how hope came into the world to begin with. And we have to remember that Jesus is the way that happened. And here at the Polished Network, we call this the big story of the Bible. It's the big story of history. And that is that God made something good. And that as people, we messed it up. We mentioned the fall earlier today in our conversation. But God sent Jesus to fix everything that's messed up. Man, he sent him to do that. And I think we're living in a place where we need to know that he is still going to return and make everything right. He's coming back. That's the big story of the Bible. God made something good. People messed it up, and God sent Jesus to fix it. And that one day he will return to make everything right. And if that is intriguing to you, if you are maybe still have questions about that, here at the Polished Network, we would love to chat with you about it. And we'll put our contact information up so that you can reach out to me or Joy or really any of us at HQ. And we would love to talk to you about that. So before we transition, let me tell you quickly about our next Lunch and Learn. We will meet again on November the 18th at noon Central Time on Facebook Live and on Zoom. And I can't think of a better way to spend your lunch break than with the ladies of Polished. And Brandy Baxter, she's a leadership and financial coach, as well as our very own strategic partnership director right here at Polished. She will be joining us on the November Lunch and Learn, and we're calling that Thank You for Your Service. That's the theme. Thank you for your service. Brandy is also an Air Force veteran, and we are highlighting women who have served our nation and our communities. So be sure to register and join us if you have anybody that has served during COVID as an essential worker, if you know people that have served in the military or armed forces or in civil service, maybe they are law enforcement. We would love for you to invite them to this. We hope it will be an encouragement to them as we gather together. And you can register for that at polishednetwork.org/lunch and learn.